Hello, RUSA community. This is Dawn Peach coming from RUSA headquarters. I'm so excited to have the floor tonight. I'm here with Doug Migden, RUSA number 5735, and I'm so excited to share him with our community. And he's going to give us some insight on doing the Transcontinental Race, how he decided to do it, actually doing the event, and things he took away from the event. So thank you, Doug, for being here, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thanks for having me, Don. I appreciate it. It'll be fun. So I started Randonneuring. I did a permanent in 2009 and my first brevet in 2010. I did PVP in 2011. And then I did the Miglia Italia in Italy in 2012. That's a 1600K. That was a big deal for me because I'm not a fast, strong, or young guy. And it was hard. And I came pretty close to failing. I had like 23 minutes to spare out of 1600K. So that was a big deal for me. Anyway, I met some guys in Italy on this 2,200 kilometer brevet, the Giro Ciclistico della Repubblica Marinara, in 2014. And they were going to do the TCR, the Transcontinental Race, that year, and I'd never heard of it. So it piqued my interest. And the Transcontinental Race is an approximately 4,000 kilometer race, first ran in 2013. It was started by Mike Hall, a British guy who sadly passed away in 2017 on the Indian Pacific Wheel Race in Australia. And the first two editions started in London, finished in Istanbul. And I started on the third edition. And I've been fortunate, lucky, whatever, lucky to avoid too much bad luck. And I've been able to finish it 8 times. And it's changed a lot over the years. And I'm older and slower and try to do it a bit safer. So I've changed a bit in my approach as well. In all honesty, I don't think I could have done it if I didn't have some Randonneuring experience and if folks in the Seattle International Randonneurs didn't help me. Lots of people from the presidents of the club, starting with Mark Thomas, to 2 old timers in particular, Bob Brudvik and Mark Roberts. They really helped me a lot. Those guys got me through the Miglia Italia, and that was a big deal for me. I don't know how much hard stuff I would have done if I didn't succeed in finishing that one. So anyway, so 2015, my first transcontinental race, started on the Muur of Gerardsbergen, the Kapelmuur in Belgium. And this one finished on the European side of Istanbul. It was the first, it was the last transcontinental race to finish on the European side of Istanbul. So we were all lined up there at the top on the Muur in, I forget the exact date in July, looking at each other. It was, I think the start was at midnight that year, wondering who's going to finish because it's like 4,000K. And I didn't have a clue. I had no idea what I was doing. That year was the first year that they had 4 checkpoints. I think the prior years they had 3 or something like that. But in 2015, the start was in Belgium. And the first checkpoint was the top of Mount Ventoux. So it's like 1,000K in. I had no idea what I was doing. And then the second checkpoint was in Italy, the Strada dell'Asiata. The third checkpoint was in Vukovar, Croatia. The fourth checkpoint was on the top of Mount Lavchin in Montenegro, and then the finish was in Istanbul. Now, on the Transcontinental Race, the way this thing works is You do your own route between the checkpoints and the required sections. And the required sections are called parcours, Parcours, and they vary in length, anywhere from a few K to, I think, 160K or so these days. A lot of variation, but those are the required sections. And then in between, you take whatever route you want, except for banned roads. And there weren't a lot of banned roads in 2015. This past year, there were a fair number. And unfortunately, I think the organizers have to ban these roads because there are just too many dangerous places. And there are a lot of dangerous places that are not banned roads. And you just have to be careful and spend a lot of time preparing. Um, anyway, without going through each race, let me see. Uh, so the thing about this race is, so it's like Randonneuring in terms of you're riding during the day and you're riding at night. Um, One difference is that you're carrying a lot more gear. You're going light with bike packing gear rather than panniers. You might see one or two people on each race taking panniers, but for the most part, nobody's doing that. And it's a race. It's not a brevet. So you got people at the front that are doing 450K plus a day, and then you got slow pokes like me that my fastest year I was doing 240, 250K a day on average, and now I'm in the 180 to 200K range. So there's a lot of variation, and the people at the front, they've always been world class, but now they're even just it's the competition's even stiffer. Christoph Strasser uh, came in second this past year, but the prior 2 years he won it. And those people are just really, really strong. They're world class. For me to do this race with them, it feels like I'm the ball boy and I get to pitch to Mickey Mantle. And I see him at the start, and that's the last time I see him. Anyway, um, so we're going day and night, just like you would on a brevet. You're carrying more gear. Interestingly enough, the fast folks are carrying less than the slow pokes like me, because the fast guys and women, they can, they get stuck somewhere that they don't want to be in the middle of the night. They can, do an extra 100K, an extra 200K, or whatever in the middle of the night. Mere mortals, we can't do that. Um, so, um, and then another big difference is that a lot of the climbs are substantially more difficult than the climbs I've done on brevets. Of course, I've only done a limited amount of brevets, so I can't make some universal statement and say the TCR climbs are harder. And then the cultural thing is huge because every year except for 2019, we start in the West and we finish in the East. And Eastern Europe is just very different than Western Europe. In a lot of ways, I like it better because it has a rawness to it. But the bike shops you run into and that kind of thing in Eastern Europe are going to be a lot more limited if you need help. And so let me just mention the rules briefly. So ride continuously. Here, I'm going to read you the rules from the first one I did in 2015. Ride continuously to Istanbul via the controls. No third party support. No private lodging. No private resupply. No drafting. Yeah, very different than Randonneuring in that regard, because unless you're going as a pair, you can go as a pair or solo. Unless you're going as a pair, you can't ride with anybody else. You can do it for a few minutes. If you're somebody like me towards the back, they probably don't care if you do it for a few hours. but you're really not supposed to ride with anybody else. And on first blush, you might think that that's antisocial, it's dumb, it's stupid, whatever. But actually, I think there's a method to that madness because it really forces you to immerse yourself in everybody else. You don't focus on your buddies, and it's really a great immersion into what's going on with the race. Let me see. The other rules. All forward travel has to be overland, except for, depending on the race, they might allow some ferries. The ferries typically have been short, except for 2015, there was an allowable long ferry across the Adriatic. And then this coming year, there's going to be a ferry across the Adriatic as well. You got to maintain evidence of your ride. You got to have insurance. You got to wear a helmet, that kind of thing. You got to follow the local traffic rules. And then the big thing is ride with a spirit of self-reliance and equal opportunity for all. And that, I think, speaks for itself. Let me see. And, the one of the big differences for me, other than the length of the event, between the Transcontinental Race and Randonneuring is the odyssey component. However, I will say that the very long, the 1200K and longer brevets have that component as well. But that was what really impressed me on my first Transcontinental Race was just, starting in the middle of the night on the top of the Muir of Gerardsbergen and then finishing in Istanbul, if I was so fortunate. And the odyssey part of that was just huge. And it's just, it's a really nice change from what we go through in our daily lives in the modern world. The best way for me to describe it is you feel like you're part wild animal, part primitive man, part Marco Polo, and part wannabe bike racer. And it's a nice combination, even for those of us that aren't the typical bike racer. And I'm definitely in that category.
Yeah. Doug, let me ask you, what did you, as far as, and again, finishing it 8 times, finishing, times and things like that, how many days on average did it, in your finishing times what was that? How long did it take you to finish?
Good question. So the first year it was about 4,250K, my route, and I finished in 18 days, 14 hours. And then I got faster from 2015 to 2018. In 2018, I finished in a little under 16 days, 15 days, 20 hours, and 19 minutes. And then I got slower and the race got harder. So my longest one was this past year, which started on the Roubaix Velodrome, Roubaix, France, where the famous Paris-Roubaix finishes. And then we finished on the Asian side of Istanbul, and my route had over 700 kilometers in Asia. And that's with taking a ferry across the Dardanelles from the Gallipoli Peninsula in Turkey over to the Asian part. So,
Wow, quite adventures to be had and all that. It's so amazing. I appreciate you sharing this with us in our community. I mean, it's pretty spectacular. And you met, by any chance, I believe you mentioned you met Mike Hall. Is that correct?
yeah, Mike Hall was he started the race. It's his baby. And he was with us for the race in 2015 and 2016. And then he passed away on the Indian Pacific Wheel Race in 2017. And so 2017 was the first race without Mike. 2017 was an interesting race. It the checkpoints, let me just back up. But, the checkpoints are just amazing. And for example, in 2017, the first checkpoint was in Germany, the Schloss Liechtenstein. The second checkpoint was the Monte Grappa in Italy. The third checkpoint was in Slovakia, the High Tatras. And that was, I'll never forget where we went. It was like this 10K road that was like 10%. It wasn't a road, it was like a busted up sidewalk. And it was really horrible weather. And I couldn't see a thing. And then all of a sudden, the clouds cleared. And I got this super impressive view for all of 20 seconds of the High Tatras, which I think are the smallest big mountain range in the world or something like that. There's just very impressive granite peaks. And what was impressive about it is that your road, I mean, this was like over 2,000 kilometers into the event to get that view. And it's this brief, 15, 20 seconds that I'll never forget, because it's just, these visuals are just, they really stick in your mind. They're very impressive, or at least they were for me.
Yeah, I look forward to. I appreciate you sharing some of the photographs, and I look forward to sharing that with our community when we have this go live in our March between controls. So, you talked about a little bit earlier about how Randonneuring helped you tackle this and things like that. What kind of things do you feel like having that base in Randonneuring helped you moving into this other type of event? Things that you carried over from Randonneuring, things that you learned?
Well, first of all, just being conditioned. I mean, things like uh, I personally like Lantiseptic, but whatever works for you for saddle sore prevention, or some people don't need anything, but you better have that figured out, or you're going to be in big trouble on this race, because 1200K, it's got a 90-hour time limit, and this race, my fastest was almost 16 days. So that's a lot of time in the saddle. And you got to really learn how to take care of yourself. And having that Randonneuring experience helped with that. And then knowing your equipment is huge. And knowing your clothes, huge. The big difference with Randonneuring, between Randonneuring and something like Transcontinental Race, with the length of the Transcontinental Race, it's I don't know, it's just, it's a lot more intense. It's longer, and it's hard to be out there a long time. Uh, that raises a good point. People think, oh, the slower racers, they're not working as hard, but the routes are such that you really don't want to be out there too long. That it gets harder. I mean, this past year I was slower. There was a lot more gravel. Since 2019, they've put a substantial amount of gravel sections in the required bits, and just being out there for a long time, it gets harder, because you get worn down. You don't get stronger. And even if you're not, the people at the front, it gets hard. I've fortunately never been last. I've never been the Lantern Rouge. But the people that are the Lantern Rouge, there's a lot of admiration for them, because it's not a tour. So I don't know if that helps much. But the Randonneuring, like I say, I don't think I could have done it if I didn't have that background. Now, there are plenty of people that have no Randonneuring, no audax experience that do it, but they're probably stronger and perhaps younger than I am. I was 58 years old when I did my first transcontinental race.
Wow.
Another big difference, and this is huge, is that in Eastern Europe, it's pretty much guaranteed that dogs are going to chase you at night. And the dog chases are pretty foreboding. I mean, it's scary. And unfortunately, I think somebody's been bit just about every year I've done the race. Christoph Strasser, who, arguably, if not the fastest guy in the world historically, one of the fastest, he was bit this past year in Bosnia. And so, that's tricky when dogs are chasing you in the middle of the night. It does keep you awake, though. No caffeine needed.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Oh my gosh. Or bringing a lot of dog treats to pass out to the dogs. I guess that would be part of your gear, maybe, or not.
Nah, I've never done that. Some people have done something like that. The problem with the dogs, in my opinion, is they're unpredictable. Sometimes you can get off your bike and walk and they won't chase, but you can't really rely on that. And sometimes you don't see the dog or hear the dog until the dog is, inches away from you. So in my opinion, they're unpredictable. I started carrying a whistle in 2016. And the whistle, it's one of those, like, you can buy them at REI, emergency whistles. And I've only seen one dog in all my years that actually jumped because of the whistle. But I think the whistle often buys me a few seconds. And perhaps most importantly is having that whistle in my mouth at night prevents me from losing my voice as a consequence of yelling at the dogs. My first transcontinental race, I was warned. Everybody said, "Hey, you got to be able to do a 400 kilometer per hour, 200-meter sprint." I don't know if that's true or not. And then you gotta be able to yell. And I lost my voice by the time I got halfway through Eastern Europe, and that's pretty scary when you can't even yell at the dog because you have no voice left.
Yeah. Did now, oh wow, that's yeah. Now the routing, earlier you talked about you had to develop the route in between the parcours. That's correct?
Correct.
And then how did you do that? Were you using people in different countries to help you out with that? Or what helped for you to make those routes? And
Well, you can use any of the routing apps you want. I use RWGPS. Komoot is one of the sponsors since, I don't know, for a number of years. I forget exactly what year they started sponsorship. So the parcours they give to us in Komoot, and I retrace them. Some people use Komoot. There are a lot of different apps that people use. I think all the apps are OSM based, um, which can be a problem because oftentimes the road is labeled as tarmac, and it turns out that it's not. And that plays with your head. That played with my head a lot this past year because we had to go through places on the Asian side of Turkey where there was no heat on the heat maps. And I have a friend from the Transcontinental Race in 2015 and 2016 who lives in Istanbul, who was the 2006 Turkish national champion, pretty ensconced in the cycling community in Turkey. And he basically said nobody goes there. And so that was challenging to figure those routes out. And I've you can do your own intelligence, you can do your own research, and sometimes that involves asking somebody if this way is safe or that way is safe. But you're supposed to do the route on your own.
yeah, okay.
Um,
Wow. It's pretty amazing. It almost reminds me of listening to Lael Wilcox doing her world event last fall. And I think she used a lot of people to help develop some routes that lived in the countries because again, if you don't live there, what's the safest route and things like that. So it sounds like you had to do a lot of that research yourself, but then use maybe some people in the areas to help with that.
Well, yeah, and that's tricky too, because sometimes, I mean, like this past year, I took an unconventional route through the Balkans. Most people went more interior. We had a checkpoint in Slovenia, the Mangart Sedlo, which is just a spectacular place. And I think technically it's the Julian Alps. It's where Austria, Italy, and Slovenia sort of come together. And this was a checkpoint in 2016 as well. And last year was the 10th edition of the race. For 2 years during the pandemic, it was canceled. So anyway, we went to the Mangart Sedlo again. And then from there, the next checkpoint was Belisnica in Bosnia. And most people went somewhat interior. But in 2023, I had a route that went Slovenia, then Croatia, and was pretty good. And so I wanted to take a similar route this year. And so I developed my route, and then I asked my friend who lives in Bosnia, I said, do you think this is safe? And he says, yeah, I think it's okay. It's a tourist route. Just be a little careful. Well, there were places on that were a total nightmare. They were like beyond dangerous, with big trucks not wanting to give me any space. Stuff out of some Tom Clancy movie, with trucks trucks and dark tunnels. And that brings up another good point, and that is that it's really important to be really well lit up on this race. I know on brevets, people don't, like flashing rear taillights because of they're riding with other people and they're annoying. And some people argue that the flashing taillight is not as safe. I would disagree. I want to be lit up like a Christmas tree. And I think the cars give you more space the more lit up you are. And it's interesting. That raises a memory for me, and that was in 2017 in Romania. The middle of the race, they banned a road, which wasn't a lot of fun because everybody had their routes planned. And they banned the road because James Hayden, who was leading the race, British guy who won the race that year and then the next year in 2018, James got halfway down this E road in Romania through some gorge. And it was just, he describes it as beyond dangerous. And he called the organizers and he said, this is bad. And, my call had died earlier that year. And unfortunately, the only fatality on the Transcontinental Race was also that year on the first night, where a Dutch, I think he was Dutch rider, Frank Simon, was killed by a drunk driver, which was obviously pretty sad. So when James said, hey, this road's beyond dangerous, they banned the road in the middle of the race. And we had to figure out alternatives. Interestingly enough, people like me who are not great with route planning were a bit in a tizzy over that. And finally, I figured out, hey, just go to a gas station and buy a road map. And that's what I did. And that helped me a lot. I chuckle about that. But anyway, in Romania in 2017, I noticed how the cars were given the horse carts a very wide berth. And I asked myself, why is that? And I realized that the reason is that they know if they hit that horse cart, it's going to be bad news for their car or their kid in their car or them. Not that they would want to intentionally hit anybody, but there is a self-protection mechanism. And when there's this big thing that you might hit, you might be a little extra careful as compared to a little bicycle. So I said to myself, how can I make myself look big? And I started putting more rear taillights on and made myself look wider and just larger in general. And sometimes I'll have four flashing at the same time. And I don't use a steady taillight because you got to preserve battery power. That's another thing. is it's one thing to have, have a dynamo and your batteries or whatever for a 1200K. But when you're going for, 2 weeks or more, um, planning's a little different. You gotta, I ride with a dynamo. Not everybody does. The batteries are getting better. I use a dynamo. I use a USB charging light, and I take some smaller external batteries as well. Um, but
Yeah.
so those are some differences,
Yeah.
perhaps.
That's very, very helpful. Now, if you had some advice, you've shared a lot in this time that we've been on the call, but like anyone that's considering, this event or anything, if you had two words of wisdom in your 8 times of completing it that you could give to anyone listening, what would you say?
First, I would say is fear the race, and not to the point that you are so nervous that you can't do it, but fear it in regard to making sure that you're well prepared, and that you've trained hard and you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's with your equipment. That's just huge, and because it's going to be, unless you're experienced in unsupported racing, it's going to be unlike anything you've done before. You might have to go days without washing. Your parts are going to hurt that you never, that never hurt you before. And it's really different, being out there for, the winters. It's taken them, 9 days at minimum. And so you're going to be out there, at least uh, 10, 12, 14, 16 days. And it's hard. You got to take care of yourself, and you got to prepare for doing that.
Yeah, that's very, very important. And well, thank you, for your time. And first, you talked about in the beginning ties to the community and how the Seattle uh, Randonneurs group and their leadership group helped you get to the point to tackle the Transcontinental. And I hope the time you've spent with us is giving some members some ideas, some pointers in any adventure that they're looking to do. So I appreciate you sharing your experience with us, Doug. And if anyone would like to get in touch with you, is there any resources that you can offer any members listening as far as a way to get in touch with you if they had questions?
Sure, they can chase me down anytime. I'm happy to help. It's an event that's dear to my heart, and and perhaps my experience will help others. The other thing, the only other thing I'd like to say is that, the route planning is pretty. To do it right, you really need to spend a lot of time. I've made so many mistakes over the years in route planning, and and if I had spent a lot more time planning my routes, maybe I could have avoided some of these problems.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Doug. I appreciate you sharing your adventures with our community and being available to members to ask questions or reach out to you should they have the questions. So thank you so much for your time. Any other parting thoughts you wanted to share with our listeners?
Um, no, just it's a great experience. The only other thing is that, uh, it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but the best part about the race is the human interactions. Uh, the kindness of strangers is just amazing on this event. And I think it's because they look at you and you're just this little person trying to do this big thing on a bicycle. And, they want to give assistance. You can't have any, you can only really get assistance from commercial establishments, but the people in these restaurants and lodging establishments have just been really fantastic. Um, if there's time, let me tell you one quick story, an example of how nice people can be. Do we have a minute?
Oh, yes, go ahead. Yep.
Okay. So, last year, let me see, last year, the race, started in Belgium, uh, again on the Muir in Gerardsbergen, and it finished. Let me get my card in Thessaloniki, Greece, and the first checkpoint was the Passel de Spluga, which I think Spluga, I think it's Italy. Yeah. Might be anyway, we had to do a lot through Italy and Switzerland to get there. And we had to go up the Goddard Pass. Not everybody went that way, but I think a lot of us went up the Goddard Pass. And I was going up the Goddard Pass, and it was late in the day. It was starting to get dark. I needed a toilet, and I think I really wanted an excuse to start to warm up. So I went into this guest house. Gasthaus, I think is how you say it in German. It's a German part of Switzerland. And it's a small establishment. And I asked the bartender, I said, can I use your restroom? She said, sure. So I used the bathroom, and then the lady was pretty nice, pretty friendly, and it was getting late, and I was getting high in elevation. I don't carry a sleeping bag. Some people do, but I think most people don't. Well, I don't know about most, but a number of people don't. I carry a bivouac sack, and I carry a down coat, down parka, and leg warmers and stuff like that. So I need to be careful about sleeping too high. And so anyway, it was getting dark, and it was starting to get cold. And I said to myself, you're probably out of sleep. And they had a deck on this guest house, this pub with a few pub rooms in it. And so I asked the bartender, I said, hey, I'm on this race. And they don't really know that you're on this race, because at this point we're very spread out. The world-class people in the front are, at this point, they're like 1,000K in front of me. So anyway, I said, I'm on this race. Would it be okay if I slept on your deck? And there are these two guys sitting at a table in the restaurant there, and they're only it's a small restaurant, maybe 10, 12 tables. And one of the guys at the table, he speaks up and he says, yeah, it's okay. Turns out he's the owner. So I said, that's great. And then they're looking at me, and the owner says, well, we're about to close down. You can sleep in the restaurant if you want. And I had already asked if they had any rooms, and they had a few rooms that they rented out, but they were already booked. So they didn't have rooms. So anyway, he says I could sleep in the restaurant. So I said, oh, that's great. So I'm pulling out my bivouac sack, and they're looking at me. And then the next thing I know, they rolled a bed into the restaurant for me to sleep in with warm blankets. And that was like the jackpot. It was like the nicest thing. And the guy,
Oh,
he gives me the key to the place, because I'm only gonna sleep for 3 or 4 hours, maybe 5 hours at the most. And he gives me the key, and he says, when you leave in the morning, put the key under the mat. And you
wow.
know, it was just this incredible experience to have them be so nice to me.
Yeah.
Where they literally rolled a bed into that restaurant for me to sleep in, and that was like, for me, that was like better than the best hotel
Yeah.
on a regular vacation. I mean, it was really the total jackpot.
Yeah, the kindness of strangers and that connection, that human connection, and them reaching out to you. Wow, it sounds, I just got chill bumps when you were telling that story. So that's pretty
And
powerful.
I've had numerous others. I had a lady in Italy in 2016. I was sick. She saw me as a restaurant running back and forth to the toilet, and all I could eat was soup. And the chef had gone home, and she went back into the kitchen and made me a couple extra bowls of soup herself. And then I've had people in the Balkans give me food just because they had a roof over their head. They had food in their guts. They had their friends and family, and they saw me and they said, "Hey, he's probably hungry," and they'd just give you some fruit or whatever. And it's just that kind of experience is, those are just unforgettable experiences. And yeah, this race is totally unsupported, whereas brevets are minimally supported. So that's another, that's another big difference. But um, uh, the people are so nice. And technically, somebody giving you a fruit or something is not allowed, but it's better to accept it than to insult them in those circumstances, because they would give it to anybody who was in that circumstance on the race.
Sure, sure. Wow. Well, this has been great, Doug. Again, I appreciate you sharing all of this with our community, and look forward to staying in touch and connecting more with our community with you, and hopefully they'll get in touch with you to chat more if they should be interested in this or any other ultra races that are similar to the Transcontinental, because there's quite a few events out there that are. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. And this is Dawn. We're signing off. Dawn and Doug, our first ever Between Controls interview with a member at large. So thanks again, Doug. Thanks for sharing your experience, your adventure, and your successes with the Transcontinental.